Hi, you guys. Welcome back. It's your gay sports fanatic here, and installment is dedicated to college football. We've got 3 weeks under our belt, heading into a big week four. So, what we're going to do in today's episode is take a look back at week three, at some of my predictions I made. We'll move on from that fast, and then we're going to look at the tops, the bottoms in college football heading into week four. I'm going to pick out 7 games in week four and tell you who I think will either cover the spread or not. So, without further ado, let's talk about last week, which was for me was a complete washout. I went 2 wins, 5 losses against the spread. So, look, you gotta when you do great, you gotta admit it. Which the first 2 weeks I did had winning records, but when you have a wipeout week like I had last week, you got to own up to it. So these weeks are going to happen. So 2 and 5 last week. So enough said about that. Let's move on to the teams that I consider the tops right now. As we've gotten through 3 weeks of this season, believe it or not, we're a quarter of the ways through the college football season. Believe it or not. So tops, I'm going to start number one, Texas again. What can you say? Starting quarterback goes out, in comes Arch Manning. He goes crazy. I'm not so sure. It's like a wealth of talent here. I'm not so sure he should be the starting quarterback anyway. So Texas looking great so far. They're going to have challenges down the road, but as of right now, Texas number one. Right behind that is Tennessee, who has outscored their opponents, I believe, by 180 points to 13. I believe is the score ratio. Tennessee's dominating. And they did beat a good North Carolina State team, so they haven't played all cream puffs here in that first 3 games. Tennessee is one of the programs that I had mentioned before the beginning of the year, along with Nebraska, that I said once was a great program. Has a great tradition, great history, but had really been dormant for the last 25 years. And I saw a revival for both these programs. Tennessee, we'll talk about Nebraska later. Tennessee is proving that correct. So look out for Tennessee. Alabama, we're going to move them. They were bottom last week. They're going to a top this week. Alabama just looked great in Camp Randall, traveling into Wisconsin. That was never a game. Alabama dominated from the first snap. That game was over before it started. Next up, Missouri. And I'm hearing some people criticize Missouri because they only beat Boston College by 6. Well, Boston College is pretty good, and Missouri won the game. And I'm going to still stick with Missouri as a top. And then Georgia, a top. But I've also heard criticism of them because they only beat Kentucky by 1 point. Well, this is on the road. If you look at history, Georgia has rarely blown out Kentucky on the road. And when you go on the SEC on the road, I don't care who you're playing, just get the W and go home. That's all that matters. So Georgia, I'm still counting in as a top. Let's move to the Big Ten. Got surprises in the Big Ten. Big Ten's very interesting this year so far. Some unexpected teams are rising. First up is Illinois, undefeated. They have a great offensive line. It's like an NFL offensive line. That affords Illinois a lot of strength. And I would have said this before the season, but I'm going to say it now. I think they're going to do some damage in the Big Ten. They're looking great. Next, who would have thunk it? Indiana, of all people. They go out to UCLA last week to Los Angeles, and they just kill them. Indiana undefeated, top. And then Nebraska, like I said before the beginning of the year, a long, dormant program that was once great. I could see a resurrection this year for them. And Nebraska's not been good and dormant. They've been god awful for years, and this year they're not. They're 3-0. So let's put Nebraska in there in the top category. Not going to leave out Ohio State. They haven't played anybody yet, but there's no reason not to keep Ohio State in that category at this time. You don't want to mess with Ohio State. Now let's go to the Big 12. Kansas State, absolutely, that's a top. They're a top. Oklahoma State, a top. Uh, I know they had a very close game against Arkansas, double overtime at home, but you know what? That's okay. I mean, it's the second game of the season and they got the W. So I'm going with Oklahoma State up. And you notice I'm not including Colorado on this Big 12 list. I they won this game last week against Colorado State. You'd think they had beaten, I don't know, Texas on the road or Alabama on the road or something. I mean, it's the hype machine behind this team is really ridiculous. And I just think it's win some games, and winning at Colorado State does not make me put you as a top. Sorry, I'm not doing it. So you win, keep winning, and we'll think it over. And in the ACC, the only team that really comes to mind to me in the ACC is Miami. I don't see how anybody challenges Miami for the ACC title. So let's give it up for Miami. As far as the teams that are bottoms, that are just down and out, we're going to visit the state of Florida and sack out there for a little bit. How about Florida, the Florida Gators? God, what a terrible team. They are just horrible. I had no idea, honest, that they'd be this bad. I didn't think they'd be in the top of the SEC or anything, but they are literally with Vanderbilt as the worst team in the SEC. They're just horrible. Then across, just down the road, is Florida State. If anybody be worse than Florida, it's Florida State. They're worse. They don't execute. Uh, they're absolutely terrible. Next is Wisconsin. I hesitate to put them as a bottom because they did get drilled by Alabama, but they didn't show up at all, and they were at home. So that's not the Wisconsin I've known in the last whatever years. That was a really poor performance by Wisconsin. So they're going to the bottom bin this week. And then also is Mississippi State, who will challenge Florida for the worst team in the SEC. They're horrible. So Mississippi State, bottom. So there's our top teams and our bottoms for the going into week 4. So with that, let's look at some of the key matchups in week 4. This is a much better week of matchups than we had last week. So I'm going to start off in Lincoln, Nebraska. And of course, I've been full of praise for Nebraska, but I'm also full of praise of the team that's coming in. That is Illinois. So Illinois goes to Nebraska. Nobody would have thunk this would have been a big game early on in the Big Ten, but it is. Illinois is a 9-point underdog. Now, I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I like Illinois getting 9 points. Again, I mentioned this offensive line. That affords Illinois a lot of ability, a lot of strength on offense. So I don't see them losing by more than 9 points. Again, may not win, but I like Illinois and taking the 9. Next game is UCLA at LSU. LSU is a middle level SEC team that did pull out a victory in South Carolina last week. They barely won, but again, on the road, SEC, get the W. Just get that W and get out of there. LSU did that. I think this is their first true real home game for them. I think they're going to romp over UCLA. LSU is a 22.5-point favorite. I'm taking LSU, and I'm giving away the 22.5 points. Next game is USC at Michigan. This would sound like a marquee game, but Michigan is not very good. USC is. USC is giving away 5.5 points, so they're a 5.5-point favorite against Michigan. I'm taking USC to cover this spread in Ann Arbor. So that sad for Michigan. They're having a tough year, but they can always watch their highlights from last year. Then we have a great game in Norman, Oklahoma. This is going to be one to keep your eyes glued to. Oklahoma, a little bit of a mystery here. We're not sure what we got. They had a close game last week, but they're at home. But we've got Tennessee, one of my top teams this going into this season so far. Again, legacy program that's making a major comeback. Offense firing on all cylinders. Defense outstanding. What more can you ask for? Tennessee is giving away 7.5 points. That's a lot of points to give away to Oklahoma at home. I like Tennessee to certainly win. I like Tennessee to cover the spread at 7.5 as well. So that's Tennessee giving away the 7.5 to Oklahoma. Next, we have Arkansas, the Hogs at Auburn. I picked this one out because it kind of struck out to me. I don't think Auburn is a very good team. I'm not saying that the Hogs are that great either. I think they're both kind of at an equal level footing in the SEC, which is middling to maybe lower tier. But I saw that Arkansas is getting 3.5 in this game, and I like the Hogs here with the points. Again, I'm not going to say they're going to win this game, but I like that 3.5. So Arkansas plus 3.5 at Auburn. Take Arkansas. Next up is Utah at Oklahoma State. Now, this is a big game in the Big 12, and I had Oklahoma State as one of my tops. And I like Oklahoma State in this game in Stillwater a lot. I think they're beginning to fire here and get going. I think Oklahoma State is one of maybe two, three favorites to win the Big 12. I'm going to throw Iowa State in there, of course, as well. Kansas State, too. Colorado, we'll see. We're going to need to see a little more there before we put them in more commercials. So in this game, I'm taking Oklahoma State to cover the spread. They're -3. I think they're going to cover that, give the 3 away, and take Oklahoma State. Last but not least, the much discussed, always under focus, Colorado Buffaloes and Coach Primetime are playing Baylor. Now, winning this game is not, it'll prompt a lot of Hoseas from the media and all these other people that are rooting for Colorado. But Colorado will win, beat Baylor. I also like Colorado. They're a 15-point underdog. I like Colorado to cover the spread. So I think Colorado will solidly beat Baylor. So anyway, you guys, as usual, I want to thank you for joining. We'll see if I can do a little better this week than I did last week, get back to my form in weeks 1 and 2. So that's it from your Gay Sports Fanatic. My NFL edition will be coming up soon for this week. Thank you. Be sure to like and also to subscribe, or please comment as well. Let me have it if you want. So thank you, you guys. Over and out.